that, and so and show up shortly. We have the minutes that were emailed. Are there any updates or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion that the minute. Eric, second, Luann, all in favor? The opposition? None. We welcome Josh Dalton, our newest SMAC member. Glad to have you on board and want to hold some space and you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Josh Dalton, I grew up in Brevard, North Carolina. I went to NC State in 1992, graduated in 96. And so I've been a Raleigh resident for 31 years now. But this is home. I'm a professional engineer. We specialize in stormwater. That's our niche. So this fits well with this commission, so I'm excited to be a part of it. I have 2 kids that are in school here in Raleigh. One's finishing 9th grade today at Broughton, and a daughter that's finished the 7th grade today. So that's the short and sweet.
All right. Thanks. I look forward to your contribution.
Thank you.
Either digitally or present, just some comment. Right. Nicola, any planning commission update?
Yeah, I just preface this by saying that Ben Dow's will have the trusted resource of looking at that one, but in kind of reviewing the recent planning meeting, which pulled together something, just a quick update on some of the kind of rezoning cases. These aren't really particularly related to stormwater. It's not kind of a pressing issue. We don't have the nice graphics from Ben and kind of have the whole system there. But one just kind of highlight a few that are kind of going on, mainly just for awareness. There's one that kind of touches on it. The very first one is about 7 acres, recently approved, but kind of first discussed in the beginning of April there. Kind of doing a transition, really downtown mixed use, just a little bit more kind of density there. New provisions, updating just for kind of bike and pedestrian access. Again, these are just, it's more for kind of awareness, looking at what's going on in the area, but and nothing really kind of highlighting the stormwater aspect on that one. So the next one there, again, it's kind of a larger lot, 6.7. It was recently approved. This was from the May 23rd meeting, so it was first discussed, and they added in a few kind of zoning additions there for commercial mixed use. Again, so it just northeast of the South McDowell and Martin Luther King. So I was just saying that, knowing the area, knowing the information, I thought it was just kind of an interesting location to put it in there, and maybe something else kind of popped into mind, but that was recently approved. The next one, looking at this one was it's only 2.5, this 2.5 acres, a new rezoning. This was, the previous 2 were kind of revisiting older ones. This is kind of a new one that was first addressed in the May meeting. Excuse me. This was kind of a minor one to kind of really to revise previous conditions of the zoning that was occurring there. Really, it was kind of its new use for a church, and so in that area, you can kind of see the development, or it's kind of nice to see not just the full map view, but kind of a satellite view of the area it's going to be developed into. They didn't say anything about kind of, I believe they have restrictions on there for development of housing, dwelling units, that type of thing, but there wasn't an intention for that. So interested just in the area, but the final one, going to the next slide, is maybe the only one that's marginally compatible as a stormwater related one. So thanks for being with you, the highlight reel here. But this is kind of a larger lot. It's 15.6 acres. Going really, it's kind of increase the height and kind of allow for parking as well. So it's residential zoning 10, kind of going to a mixed 5 stories. You can kind of tell the type of development that's going to be in this area. They did have the reason it's slightly stormwater related is they do have a stream that kind of runs through that. So due to the length of the stream, or to have the floodway there, a flood study would be required. It's not in the FEMA floodplain or anything like that, but just because of that, the length of the stream, that the study would be required. That one is not. They're kind of deferring that to the next meeting, just so they have additional additional conditions that are potentially related or have applied there. But one to kind of keep that in mind, knowing the area, being able to kind of, look at that. Also, it's kind of a larger site, so, nothing too in the weeds, but it's just kind of interesting to kind of stay on top of it. And I think the visuals help for sure, just to get a feel for the land that's being developed or rezoned there. But if there are any questions, I do have a cheat sheet, but I might not be the best one to answer, but if there are any questions, I'll try. Cool. Thanks so much for loading that.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Wayne?
Yeah, we have a couple staff updates for the stormwater team. First, I'd like to announce Allison Harris was recently promoted to engineering specialist position within the stormwater control measure inspections program. Allison started with about a year ago in active construction inspections. Before working at the city, she spent several years in private industry helping to manage stormwater compliance, stormwater control measure compliance and infrastructure for large retail sites across the U.S. She has a bachelor's from NC State Environmental Technology and Management and a minor in toxicology. So congratulations to Allison on her promotion. And we have Alex Lynn, who's also here with us today. Alex is a rising junior at UNC Chapel Hill, part of the third cohort of the Raleigh Partnership Climate Intern Award-winning program, which the EAB, Megan Anderson's been very instrumental in helping organize. So we're glad to have another intern joining us this year as part of that program. Alex is majoring in statistics and analytics and brings a more data-driven approach to our stormwater project management. He's fascinated by seeing trends in data that provide a means to predict our world, bringing forth a way to prevent tragedies before they happen. And so we're glad to have Alex. He's going to be looking at a lot of rainfall data and other statistical analysis for us. So welcome, Alex, to the stormwater team. And that is all the staff updates. I'll go ahead and move to the high priority topics. The first one I wanted to mention that back in May, on May 19th, right here in this very room, stormwater team sponsored a tour to 3 of the freshman city council members at their request to give them a little higher level overview of what stormwater does. So we gave a number of presentations. Some SMAC has already seen. The flood early warning system was one of them, an update on green stormwater infrastructure, talked about zoning and planning conditions. We gave them the tour, much like the commission received back in the, and most of you, the maintenance team gave the crew the CCTV and flusher trucks. And so I think got a lot of good interest, a lot of good questions. Overall, I think a very successful event, and thanks to Reverend Taylor for also attending and giving part of the presentation on SMAC's role.
I thought it was great, particularly when you have city council come to this space and talk about what stormwater does, with fantastic staff. So I thought it was a morning and afternoon well spent.
Great, thank you. Thanks again for attending. The other note, we had a national conference in Raleigh in May as well. It was the Association of State Floodplain Managers Conference. So this is a big national conference. There were over 2,000 attendees. I think a few hundred of those were virtual, but still down at the Raleigh Convention Center, a lot of attendance, good high profile visibility for Raleigh. Kelly presented on the flood early warning system. I made a presentation on the alluvial decoder art display. And I ran into somebody else who was attending the conference there as well, which appreciates you taking the time to get in depth into the technical aspects of what we do.
Yeah, 1,800 people present. I text Wayne, I said, I'm at the conference. He says, I am too, and we were in the same room. We didn't see each other.
So that was a good recognition for Raleigh of a national conference right in the area that we were. And then, I think this is probably the best place. Chairman also asked staff to give a brief update on, a recent Supreme Court ruling that, will have potentially significant impacts on the definitions of waters of the state and potential regulatory of wetlands. And Scott, Brian, do you mind just giving a quick highlight of that ruling and the potential implications? I guess there's a lot we don't know yet, right?
That's right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all here on June 1st. We're still learning about the recent ruling, obviously just within the last week or so. But on the surface level, this is an engineer's perspective, not an attorney. We have not had a chance to reach out to our attorney's office yet, but certainly there's less federal protection or regulation over wetlands. And as I understand it, as a lay engineer, it is before we had protection for adjacent wetlands that may be not directly connected at the surface. The new regulation apparently only regulates wetlands that are adjoining and surface connected. Some of you may help me with that, but I think a direct surface connection to a larger water of the state, but larger body of water. So it could be very significant, could be many acres of wetlands potentially impacted by that. For our part, our goals are to protect beneficial wetlands here in Raleigh. That's part of your lake management evaluation policy, to protect those, enhance those where possible. And we're certainly seeking to restore streams as well. Many of those may be intermittent streams, which may potentially come into that in that ruling. But we're going to continue to be proactive here in Raleigh with y'all's support and doing the very best that we can, because we know those are beneficial wetlands for water quality, also for reducing flooding, as well as for the environmental protection in general. So we'll keep learning about that. I don't have a detailed update for you. Perhaps we can reach out to our attorneys as well to get their take on potential implications for us at the local level.
So I think another, thank you so much for that. I think another piece that I know we've been following is the state level piece where, right now the state, regardless of what the federal ruling is, has protections for wetlands in place, but that could change with the passing of the farm bill. So I think that's just an interesting piece that we're just TBD to follow into.
Yeah, I think just following up on that, like for people that aren't aware, this is the federal and the state level, there's legislation out to limit the state per section of the same isolated wetlands. That, I would kind of encourage the group, if they have an opinion about that, to look into it more, reach out to their representatives if they feel some time. But it's an interesting redundancy right now. Do those back to back, and there's debate about whether the federal regulations trump the state. Whether it's necessary to change the state regulations at the time based on the federal stuff that just happened. But like you said, I think a lot of lawyers got to read over.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you all so much.
I inadvertently skipped one of the bullets. The budget was presented to city council on May 16th. The feedback was generally very positive, as you recall from our presentation. We are presenting or proposing a 2.5% rate increase this year as part of the FY24 budget, which comes out to be about 18 cents per equivalent unit on the stormwater fee, on the monthly stormwater fee. So the final stormwater fee proposal will be approved as part of the overall budget when the council passes the entire budget. But so far, the feedback has been positive on the proposal that we've made. So we would anticipate, we have not been asked to make any changes, which normally we would have by now if there was any concerns. Okay. Yeah, thank you for pointing out. I skipped that one. Two notices prior to construction I'd like to bring up. One is the Biltmore Hills Green Stormwater Infrastructure retrofits. This is a project that Raleigh Stormwater has been working on jointly with NC State Water Resources Research Institute. And the design is complete and moving into construction. Biltmore Hills is a city park in South Raleigh. And so and it's an older park, so it was developed before there were any stormwater controls in place. So this retrofit will help mitigate stormwater impacts in that park. Excited about that opportunity. And then one more, Millbrook, another park, Millbrook Exchange Park, which is in northeast Raleigh. There's a stream repair. This was actually a design that we worked on with NC State probably about 5 years ago. It was an innovative design. Some parts of it worked, some parts of it didn't work as well as we'd hoped. So, but we've learned, and it was an innovative design, so that was part of the intent, was to test it out. So we are going back and making some repairs to that project, and that project will start construction here shortly as well.
Any questions for Wayne? All right, we welcome Megan and Ben. Megan, the city's sustainability manager, and Ben, chair of the EAB. I know Wayne and I were at EAB last October, practice. This is, I guess, return for that. And also in the agenda, it says BR Doc Ben Kobe. In my religious tradition, BR is brother, which means monk. So I didn't know you were a particular.
I didn't know either. All right.
Well, thank you so much. We're really happy to be here. As was mentioned by Reverend Taylor, Megan Anderson, head of sustainability for the city. Really, thank you for the work that you do. We really love partnering with the EAB and the other boards on all the important things happening in the city. And so with that, we'll get started. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We'll do some short introductions, and then Ben's going to take you through a little bit about the EAB and connections that we have with your group. And then I will actually, a lot of the work that we do relates back to our climate action plan. And so I'll give you an overview just of kind of the whole thing at a high level, just so you're aware. And there's a lot of interaction with the work that you do with that, just so you're aware, and feel free to ask any questions. It's a good opportunity for us to get more information out there, and then open to any questions or discussion as well. With that, I'll pass it over to Ben.
Okay, so one of the things that I always think is best is put faces along with the names on there. So I'd like to give a brief introduction of our actual EAB board. And as you can see, unfortunately, it's really hard for all of us to be in the same room at one point in time, or at one event at a time to get a picture, but this is the most recent picture of our board. I myself, I'm in my 6th year on the 3 terms total. 2 of those terms, I've either been vice chair or chair. And our board is composed of, I'm an assistant professor of radiology at Duke University, but we have former director of NC Division of Water Quality and architectural instructor from Wake Tech, a utility and energy expert, other architecture, director and founder of the Great Raleigh Cleanup, a business owner, an environmental engineer, and an associate director of methane accountability at Climate Nexus. So as you can see, we have quite a range of professions, but what we really do all have in common is a passion for the environment and providing leadership to make Raleigh a little bit better as far as the environment goes, and help them reach that goal that they have of an 80% reduction in greenhouse gases by the year 2050. So some of you may be aware, in SMAC, we are a board, not a commission. Of course, you guys are a commission. So while there are some differences between our 2 boards, there actually is a lot of overlap, and that's what I highlighted here in bold that you can see. So I feel that these areas we align quite nicely. In fact, our 2 groups have actually worked together in the past. And I would like to highlight one of the projects that we did in the past, which was actually the Sandy Forks Road widening project. So this is back in 2017. And the idea was to see if we can improve mobility and connectivity for the Raleigh residents. Yeah, they're good, yeah. It's actually, so I was gonna say before that, but that's fine, you can stay there. That the Sandy Forks widening project was the first green road. And that, earned silver green road certification in, 2018. It was the 45th project of green roads. And it was the top ranked and highest scoring project international that they had at that time. Was this one here. And what it composed of was biotension ponds there. Also a warm mixed asphalt that the best practice not only reduces greenhouse gas emissions and energy costs during the installation, but it also reduces heat that the construction crews must take while they're actually doing the work. And then you can imagine being in the summer in Raleigh, it gets kind of hot. Road work. Also want to highlight the fact that all the previous concrete that was used in this was actually removed and recycled for the use in the repaving portion of this project. And it reduced the amount that was sent to the waste landfill. One of the quotes from one of the people that worked on the project said, not only does this design include stormwater features that treat all the increase of impervious surfaces from the project, which is not typical for transport projects in North Carolina, but this comprehensive project also transforms a beat-up dark roadway into a safe residential street that welcomes residents and fits the character of the communities. Pretty impactful project. And getting more to the present here, as Mr. Wayne Miles had mentioned, or Mr. River Taylor did, that you all came to our board fairly recently, last year in October, to provide information on how the city regulates land use in floodplains. And this topic actually aligns quite well with one of our work plan items, which is stormwater with equity, sustainability, and resilience. One of the things that we tackled this year, or like to. And so the board was actually quite engaged with many questions, but I thought like the most important question that we always ask when we get together as a board and we have someone come present to us is, how can we help? What is it that we can do to help, get information in front of the city council from an environmental standpoint? And so through this presentation, we came up with the following recommendations that we're going to go to city council. So the first one is we want to highlight the importance of Raleigh Rainwater Rewards Program. And we also like to talk about or ask that city council looks into the voluntary buyout of houses in floodplains as it's slightly unfunded. The next one is we want to address the causes of downstream flooding by not applying a Band-Aid. We want to actually what is causing the problem and address it there so that the downstream flooding does not occur. And then one thing that's always been a cornerstone for the EAB that since I've been on the board has been equity. And so we take the way that we look at projects and programs, it's actually from an equity perspective, and we think that's key. So we're going to recommend that the council look to mitigate environmental impacts on past environmental injustices. So this ends my part of the talk here. So just moving forward, we would like to better align our work that the EAB and SMAC is doing despite our differences between being a board and a commission. I actually think that might actually give us an advantage because we'll be able to tackle environmental issues from two vantage points from that standpoint. So we're adding items to our work plan, and we currently have work plans on items on our work plan, that I think aligns well with the mission of SMAC. And so whenever these items come up, we're going to reach out to you all, let you know that they're coming. If you have some comments or you want to come in and see them or have a discussion with us, we would strongly encourage that. And if that could be reciprocated back, if you guys have anything that come across your desk in the future that you think the EAB would like to have, or any way that we can help you out, letters of support for anything that you're doing, stuff like that, we would be more than happy to do that.
All right, so with that, I'll take over here, and as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about our community-wide climate action plan. Just always like to start with a nice quote, and all the work that you're doing and you support in the community is definitely part of our work to combat climate change over time. So I'm going to give you just some background, a little bit on the CCAP in general. That's if you hear me say CCAP, it's the Community Climate Action Plan. We've been working on this kind of stuff for a really long time, so it's great that we are where we are. just some examples of the many things we've been doing back since the Environmental Advisory Board was established to work on climate change. And we do have a greenhouse gas goal that the city council set as we were working on our community-wide climate action plan. So 80% reduction in emissions by 2050 that we're working on. And this really talks about our objectives and strategies and where we're trying to have high impact. So everything we're looking to do, because it does kind of have everything in the kitchen sink in it, is looking at high impact. So we have the objectives, which are organized around the three main areas, not only greenhouse gas reduction, but also supporting climate equity and building community resilience. Happy and proud to say Raleigh was one of the first cities across the country to really embed all three into their climate planning. Not that a lot of other folks aren't doing good work on that, but it's a lot to manage and track, especially when you've got disparate plans all over as well. So really happy to have it all there. And then our strategy categories are also organized by high impact. So as you'll see soon, buildings and energy, transportation, land use, very high impact areas for greenhouse gas reduction. Resilience and cross-cutting has a lot of things that relate right back to the work that Stormwater and this board looks at. So just quickly to kind of set the stage here, our greenhouse gas emissions, as typical in every city, transportation, buildings, and energy are always first and second for the most part. Very close here in Raleigh. We're doing our greenhouse gas inventory update right now, so I'll be curious to see what those new numbers look like. And when we talk about it from a resilience perspective, as this board knows better than most, we're just seeing a lot of changes happening. We're having more extreme weather patterns, longer heat waves, more precipitation, flooding, of course, more frequent extreme weather patterns, and then just things that are causing more and more issues, especially in the community, which gets us to the importance of equity. So unfortunately, the folks that usually feel the impacts the most are those that are usually contributing the least, so those in our community living in the floodplain, lower income communities, those that work outside, those relying on the bus, walking on the streets to get to the bus stops, can be more affected by these issues. So we really want to design all of our strategies to embed and think about equity, which Stormwater has been one of our champion departments that does a really good job of that. So I'm not gonna touch on everything. I have a lot on these slides. It's just gonna give you some highlights of our first implementation report, which really gives you examples of things that we're actually doing in the community. You'll see a lot of things reflected that reflect back to the topics that you discussed. If you have questions, we can go back to anything more because I'm not gonna touch on everything. But within buildings and energy, the high level areas are looking for energy efficiency with buildings, getting the greener energy supply, which really relies on our utilities like Duke Energy, and then trying to find more clean options ourselves, like renewable options, which in Raleigh, solar is one of the big ones. And this relates back to, in some ways, right back to stormwater as well. So we have a lot going on in the city and within the community to promote green buildings, which is great. A lot of stormwater best practices are included in things like Energy Star and LEED certified buildings. And we have, as you've heard, I know, hopefully probably all voted for, was the big parks fund that came out, which is another good example where we're really trying to embed best practices into all that money and investment we're putting in to really think about green infrastructure, solar, energy efficiency, and other best practices too. So if you're not aware, please go sign up if you're interested in a free evaluation for our Solarize program. We were really excited. We actually broke all the records, came together. We have 12 communities. We just kicked off the second year, but for the first year, we broke all the records and had the most people sign up ever when they've ever done a program like this across the country. So we were able to do a second year because we have so many folks that are interested. It's a great way for you to really just see what's possible on your building, and we're doing group purchasing, so everybody can kind of get a discount the more people that sign up, which is great too. And we have some really good partners that have very closely vetted the products to make sure they're best practices. There's a lot of folks out there trying to sell solar now, and it's a little confusing for folks, so we're making sure that this is a really good, responsible program for everybody to take advantage of, and there's no worries with that too, so that's great. And there's a lot of incentives and things out there right now too, and some changes coming with the Utilities Commission. This October, it just got moved back from July. So I would suggest if you're interested, it's better because it'll be more clear what the rules are. Not that they'll be not as it's just a little unclear what's gonna happen after October, so it's probably better to just get signed up on there, now, just to get an evaluation and be up to speed. So please spread the word, if you're interested in this program. And then just, this kind of shows that we've really quadrupled our solar capacity over the last 10 years in Raleigh. And the city also has been doing quite a bit where we can as well to work on renewables too, which is pretty exciting. And then the Sustainable Business Toolkit, actually stormwater programs are reflected in this program. It's basically coming together with a lot of the cool resources, funding, opportunities for education, everything that we have that we can put together. The business and development community are really high impact for a lot of the things that we're looking at. So we package this together. There's actually a lot of resources in here too that are also open to individuals, nonprofits, anyone else too. So I encourage you to take a look and share this with anybody as well. And we did have a little bit of a gap. We've got a lot of great programs that are external, as stormwater is an example, but when it came to kind of buildings and energy, we didn't, but we partnered with the state of North Carolina and Department of Environmental Quality and some others to build this out a little bit more on some of those programs. So there's some good best practices in there for folks to follow. So transportation and land use, that has to do with alternative transportation options, and then equity and transit-oriented development. And then we're doing a big push on EV infrastructure. That's one of the biggest ways we can move towards greenhouse gas reductions in the shorter term to our goal as the grid gets cleaner, making sure we're using electric vehicles as well. So some examples, you've probably heard about the exciting bioenergy project, and we're moving a lot of our fleet over to use compressed natural gas that's being transitioned from our wastewater program, which we're so excited about. Pretty cool. And then the other parts of the fleet, we're looking at electric and other innovations over time. And as we roll out the bus rapid transit program, we're actually doing some cool programs and got some ARPA funding, and we're going to put solar panels on the top of all those, which is great for lots of reasons, and also just really close for people to kind of interact with too. I'm trying to tag the sunshine line as a tagline for it. We'll see if it sticks. And then so also just land use is something that your team is really experts in. And so there's just a lot of examples, in particular with stormwater, that interact with land use, making things more walkable, bikeable, get people out of their cars, and heat, flooding. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Really, really important, and something that we really try to reflect. So I encourage you to kind of flip through the implementation report and see all the different projects that we've highlighted for the year there. And EV, as I mentioned, we've been doing a ton of work on that. Actually, most of the day today, I was out with our vehicle fleet and a couple other of our climate interns and some Raleigh Water, looking at sites around Raleigh where we can do maybe public-private charging opportunities. We're doing an EV implementation rollout right now to transition our fleet fully electric in the next 10 years. Actually, just last week, while we were out painting our big mural, if you haven't seen it, just down the street, we were just finishing, we were out there painting. We actually won top fleet in the nation, actually at an event, which is really exciting this last week. So last year we were in the top 10. This year we got #1, which is really exciting in large fleet and overall fleet for all the innovative work that's happening too. So we work really closely with our vehicle fleet group. Really excited about that. We also actually helped write the standards for electric vehicles in North Carolina. So it's not a new technology, but it's really budding still. And so there were not standards in North Carolina. So we partnered with Advanced Energy, who is on the NC State campus, and came together and wrote up a playbook that has anything from ADA accessibility, signage, best practices, what different kinds of charging. It's not rocket science, but it does get pretty complex to kind of figure out all the puzzle pieces to put this all together. The city doesn't want to be in charge of owning all the private infrastructure, but we do want to do things like have a playbook. We also created a mapping tool that has criteria, including environmental justice and equity, to think about where we can have strategic conversations to help the community think about transitioning as well. And then resilience cross-cutting. So lots of stuff that this group does is included here. This has anything from our waste reduction, preserving and growing our natural spaces and our habitats, green infrastructure work, other equity and environmental justice work, resilience, And then funding, partnerships, community engagement, outreach, innovation, and piloting. So within resilience and cross-cutting, we're really thinking about everything that needs to be embedded in everything else. So I have some examples here, but you'll see that a lot of the work we're doing in all those areas also reflect back through everything that we're doing. That's kind of the point of the cross-cutting piece. So lots happening. I'm sure everybody sees the green cards happening. There's a lot of things to kind of move us towards curbside composting and cleaning up a lot more with our yard waste center. We have a lot of other waste reduction programs that we've run. Our Raleigh free fill program, hopefully we're bringing it back. It was started and it was doing great right before COVID. And then of course, everything shut down. It's an opportunity to fill your water bottle up anywhere that's participating downtown. We have a sustainable events guide. And if you came to our Earth Day event this last year, and I know we had some awards from some of the folks here, we work to try to make our events as sustainable as possible and lots of other initiatives to reduce waste. And then green space, pollinator habitat, just a couple examples. I know Wayne and I are really involved in with parks and our accreditation for biophilic cities. We do a lot with food security and community gardens. Bee City USA is actually a partnership we have with the Parks Group, and then work with a lot of departments, including Stormwater, on making sure we have habitat for pollinators. Parks does monarch way stations as well, and we do participate in Lights Out Raleigh to make sure we're not interrupting migration season for birds as well. And this slide is obviously just highlighting the very tip of a lot of the things that are happening within Stormwater. Really proud of how awesome the Stormwater group is on embedding equity and resilience into their work and educating local neighborhoods. Wayne and I's team work really closely with Partners for Environmental Justice, including Reverend Taylor and others on our Walnut Creek Watershed Learning Network, which we're looking into expanding a lot more, that I'm sure you've heard a lot about, so I won't tell you what you already know. And then here's some examples. I know a lot of you were aware of our heat mapping campaign that Wayne and team were able to then embed with your flooding work to kind of help us even get some of the ARPA funding you're working on now. That was a big program, and actually we had the most volunteers of any city that had ever done that as well. People are super excited about it. Lots of departments are excited about it. We're doing a lot of cool things to continue to think about mitigating heat around piloting some cool roadways technology. So it's got pavement technology. So not only are we thinking about the green infrastructure around it, but how do we make that pavement less absorbent of heat and help with pollution as well. We're working on the street tree equity project to think about where we're planting and how we're planting trees. As mentioned, Wayne's team's been leading a lot with the flooding and heat with ARPA funding. And then we are working on mapping environmental justice, which is actually co-leads from our team and Wayne's team are leading that effort as well. And we do have a lot of partnerships with a lot of folks on this work for sure. And here's just another few examples of many of the various things that we work on, including the annual environmental awards, which Stormwater also hosts. Thank you for that partnership on your award as well. And our climate intern program is also a really big one that we really love and appreciate the partnership with the departments on as well. We have a climate action fund. We work within the departments to talk about where we can make up the delta on anything that they're working on. And we are working on a lot of federal local grants for several programs as well. So a couple things coming up. I mentioned we're doing our greenhouse gas emissions inventory update. Really, we were due in 2021, but because of COVID, we wanted to wait to get 2022 data because, as we all know, the world kind of blew up and it wouldn't really be that relevant to where we are. We just launched a CCAP data dashboard, which is pretty cool if you go on our website. We have our CCAP implementation report, which kind of goes through a lot of this in more detail, and a data dashboard to show you where we're at. We're working on a lot of partnerships and funding opportunities, as mentioned, and also we're looking at where we can pull some more levers, which I think we're really following in the footsteps of a lot of things that this group's done around other levers we can kind of pull with green buildings and clean transportation opportunities. Looking internally at our own policy, but also in the community, as this group knows better than most. There's just, it's a little confusing where the lines are sometimes in North Carolina, so trying to figure that out. And then just more with communications, partnerships on outreach and education. We have quite a bit going on with our communications department. Climate change has been one of the big themes that they've been working on with us throughout the year. We've got some more things to roll out as well with our basically more branding, just to make sure folks understand. Almost everything that comes out from the city has some sort of a climate message to it. And a lot of the time, it's just hard to get that message put in there so folks understand that it's all part of the work that we're doing to combat climate change. So with that, that is the end of the presentation. And would love to see, I don't know how much time we have, but happy to answer any questions or move on, but depending on what you'd like to do.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ben, any questions or comments?
Served on the board before, prior to being on this back and chair of the DAB, so it's, yeah, you can see all great work, and I think it should be noted that it is a small, but it is a very small, but very nimble group of people that serve on the DAB and serve in Megan's office, so they're doing a lot of work, but it's a lot of technicals, it's just not very, they should double their staff size if I could put a plug in. If Raleigh wants to go where they say they want to go, they should. About this. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Graham, and thanks for all your leadership when you were on here. It's good. I always like when we spread, good environmental people out everywhere to keep and making the connections.
So I have just a few questions. I saw you mention climate change, a number of slides. How do you quantify non-climate stressors like development? I know you had the Walnut Creek watershed study. Yeah, do you quantify non-climate stressors like development and how that impacts these under-resourced areas?
That's a great question, and I feel like that's something we could do a better job of. I think even just getting up some of the dashboard data, we actually have a partnership with some different groups, and we're looking to get more partnerships on just thinking about that. I think we probably do in some ways, and I think stormwater probably is a good example of the work that this group looks at as far as there's a lot of mapping, and I think a lot of that environmental justice mapping we're trying to put together will be helpful too, where we're trying to see, basically, we're working through, there's so many different disparities to look at, and some of them the city has control over and some they don't, but we want to know that all those things matter when it comes to disparities for the community. So how do we create a map that has those reflected? And then we look at what we're doing within the city, with whether it's the transportation department, Raleigh Water, different departments, to see what we can do that we can change, and then where those intersections are. So I know that's probably not exactly what I think we're getting there, but if you have ideas on ways that we could actually quantify those things and then work on them as we grow so quickly, there's a lot of data. It's almost like information overload, and how do you slice and dice it depending on what kind of decision you're trying to make within departments. So a lot of times we're looking for foundations like that, to like the heat mapping data. We didn't know what we were going to do until we had it. And then there were so many things that we could do with it and embed into different work. I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. There's so many different things to tackle. How do we layer them together? How do we see who's faring the worst and the best, and then make decisions differently on how we're using our resources? I don't know if that's kind of broad, but I think there's examples of that, but you may be thinking of another example or a more specific way that we could do that.
No, what you said helps.
Okay.
Think about your presentation in light of what Nicola presented earlier with the rezoning. 3 of the rezoning are taking property that is forested or wooded and developing it for 20 stories, 40 stories. And 2 of them are in areas that historically been underserved. So, for example, what used to be the old NCAE building, which is MLK, that was 4th Ward. So 50 years ago, that was historically Black community. And then the part off Pool Road, again in Southeast Raleigh. So you have the cutting down of trees, which is going to directly impact the heat study that the city did. They thought it'd be 2 degrees difference, and it's almost 10 degrees difference in those very areas. So I'm just wondering, obviously 2 doesn't exist now, but it would be helpful
Mhm.
that you have these areas that have historically been underserved. And these developments are not helping in this effort,
Yeah.
because you're taking tree canopy and raising it.
Yeah, I think, and the impervious acre
Yes.
metric, but they use that in the DC, Chesapeake Bay area a lot, and shift from water quality to water quantity issues, tracking impervious acre change within the city, and you guys might know, but those numbers are out there based on permits. And so it's just a data collection, but, they have the capability to put that up on the map.
Mm.
Whereas the new impervious acre this year, and if it's in a certain community or not, you can track that, because that's the thing that's going on that we're doing under our regulations and everything, but it's happening continuously. I mean, out in certain parts of the edge of the city, they're just becoming pavement. And, our big thing to look at is impervious acres, because that's what's contributing, that we can control what contributes more. So it'd be really interesting if the city tracked the change in impervious acres within their footprint. And I think that it was about there, you could do it pretty easily. You just get metrics all over the track, very useful to our group.
And if I can comment just to follow up on that, we have been updating our aerial mapping usually about every 4 years, because that's how we charge our fees based on impervious area, but we are looking at making that update more frequent now. Helps with the billing, but it could also help with the mapping perspective and seeing where these changes are taking place most rapidly and doing correlations with other types of impacts. I think it's a good point. We are getting that data to be able to look at that more closely.
It's just, I really appreciate your question. I was thinking along the same lines as Reverend Taylor's question, just in terms of land use, thinking strategically about land use beyond, replanting trees and beyond neighborhood design, but looking at strategic green space protection as part of that calculation, not only for, reducing impact of urban heat islands and environmental justice pieces, but, for climate mitigation, carbon sequestration and resilience as well. So I think that's one area that our work overlaps greatly is, what's good for carbon sequestration and green space protection is also good for flooding resilience and all the work that we do. So is that something you all are working in?
I'm so glad you said that, because I forgot to mention. So when we put out our RFP to do our greenhouse gas inventory, it's not something that's really standardized yet, but I think it's a kind of an emergent issue to think about how we really measure carbon sequestration. So we put it in there. We knew we probably couldn't afford it and weren't sure. We got some ideas. They were all over the map, and I still need to go through them and get with some of the teams to say what we want to do, but we want to at least start to pilot. So the state, when they did their last inventory, but it's statewide, so it's very different than what a greenhouse gas inventory looks like for a city. They did do some carbon sequestration, basically looking at trees and green space in North Carolina. And so that's something we're trying to figure out what to do with. And we do have some there is going to be a tree inventory that's coming out shortly. It was a big partnership across Wake County. So we haven't even really seen our data yet. They're working on it, and then we have to figure out what to do. That's going to give us a great baseline, but then we have to figure out how we're going to do. This was a huge kind of thing that we did countywide. We have to figure out what we do later to keep measuring. Same thing with our heat data. That's another thing. We have this great baseline. We had tons of people come out and help us, drive all around and bike around to get this. We can't do that every year. How do we measure in certain areas? There's technologies to kind of do that. It's just figuring out those processes, when we do it, how we do it, and updating over time that we still need to figure out. And I think I'll be pinging Wayne and team here soon to talk more about sequestration. And I was going to mention a couple other things I think related to some of those ideas that came up too. So there's also a digital twin that's just interesting. I'm not sure we know what to do with it yet, but there's this cool technology that they've piloted with Raleigh, basically the GIS team. So you can actually see, instead of just like a flat layer that we all look at all the time, right? It actually shows where the buildings are now. And then it shows as you change over time what happens. So I think that could be really interesting and compelling too, because even just to educate people and I think I have a picture of just a screenshot of it. It's small, but you can kind of see it actually shows where buildings are, what they might look like. There may be some ways to really show something over time with that. I don't know if it'll be more educational or we'll actually be able to we haven't dug into it as far yet, but that might be another interesting thing to look at, because development patterns are big. And people are paying attention in Raleigh because we're one of those cities that just keeps exponentially growing. So something for us to really continue to think about. And I think you bring up an interesting point too about, there's a lot of things. It's not just the trees, it's the green space, and it's not all the same. A big, open green field full of grass is very different than a pasture and natural habitat. So a lot for us to kind of work through there. Good point.
I have a question on the image. I know that's the titanium dioxide
Mhm.
from putting a coating on the surface. What percentage of the streets in Raleigh have that?
So we just started the pilot not that long ago, so it was a pilot and there weren't, and I don't know the percentage
Okay.
offhand, but we have figured out, actually, we worked with transportation to create another map and take the data from the heat mapping and then think about, and I'm gonna get past my expertise here real quick, but so basically the street recoding happens a year or so after it has to settle, then they come back and do paving. So they're gonna try to reorganize by looking at the heat mapping to think about where to put it priority wise, and then we're looking for funding. So we've partnered with transportation again to fund it for the next year. And then we're figuring out how to embed that just into our CIP moving forward. So it's still a pretty small percentage, but the point would be to try to look at that cycle of when they do repaving and then when they come and do that layer on top out there. So it is pretty small still.
Okay.
But yeah, that picture kind of shows a really good view of before and after. So you can just tell we did this. It's hard to see on the screen, but you can tell that that little patch they did right there was cooler after they did it. For sure.
Where is that?
Oh, gosh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, I forget, but we could get you more information if you were curious where we done it. We could share more. Sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Just make sure I'm saying it right. So the rectangle to the left, where the paving was? No, if you move down where your thumb is.
Yeah, that's where it was. And this really doesn't show up a lot on the screen, but it does show a different color, really, where we had done it. It's dark. You can kind of see a little bit that it's all darker where the neighborhood streets are. It looks a little fuzzy. And here it was actually, less hot. Yeah, so.
So that rectangle says it's cool. Just make sure.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
That the street is cooler than the buildings.
Yeah, the street's cooler than what it was before.
And, okay. So there's no green space around that, right?
No, and that one in particular, so the interesting thing, you can actually go play with this tool on the website, and we had to figure out how to make it publicly accessible. So it's basically the change in temperature. It's really showing like how long does it take to cool off during the day. So we did a morning, afternoon, and evening. And so when you toggle on that map, and it really isn't showing it very well.
Rate of change.
Yeah, rate of change, basically, because that's where the heat problem is basically, yeah, so how much green space and how much impervious pavement is around that area. And basically, we're seeing that things don't cool off as fast if there's more, less trees, less green space, less impervious surface. So if you go on our website, we have the mapping tool up there, and read right above it, because it kind of tells you if you turn on all three at the same time, you're not going to see anything. But if you turn on the right ones at the right time, you can kind of see which ones are slower to cool down, which ones are faster to cool down.
Got
And that'll be really similar to where green space is, where impervious surface is. You can kind of see a road is very much hotter than everything else right around it.
And your comments about Sandy Works, I live on that street and it is way better now.
It's a nice street.
Yeah, it's a much more, pedestrians on both sides and all of that stuff. But it is something that we've talked a little bit about too. There's so much going on with BRT and all of the new paving going on in the city. And you're like, what? That's a lot more paving. Okay, and then we also raise our hands and fund the drainage assistance projects, which are to repair drainage problems that are draining off of public ways. Because they didn't used to have to treat it, so it is a really key project to think about.
That was the big part of Reverend Taylor and,
Yeah.
when Wayne came and gave the talk about that. It was really looking what we're doing now and how it's affecting downstream. And what can we do to make it fix? Yeah, so yeah,
A lot of miles of paper.
it's a lot of miles.
Yeah, I would like this, can we like task you guys someone between you to sort of see if you can figure out the new amount of impervious or pavement that's going on, it's sort of a metric, I think that's fun for us to have in our mind. As we think about this kind of stuff, and where we put this metric.
Something we're having.
It's like that count, that's Wake County, right, and yeah,
Mhm.
like all that stuff where the green area is, I got a project down there at the edge where the wastewater plant is, and you just see all the parts get paid for a house farm, if I call it a house farm. But you know, it is what it is, but that's sort of the elephant in the room, like. We're doing all this stuff at the same time over the next 10 years, all that green's gonna turn. You know, yellow, probably.
Yes, how does your model accept? There's a lot of attacking what we know, like there's, how do we stop it? I mean, what's it accounting for? The other side of the equation.
Say that, sorry.
Trees leaving, and you know, the
Uh-huh.
carbon sequestration, all of the changes that are happening
Mhm.
as rapidly as you're making incremental, small improvements.
Mhm.
So you're chasing a rabbit. and-
Yeah, not to be more of this, getting worse faster.
Yeah.
You know, that needs to be part of the discussion, I think.
Mhm.
It's so we're realistic in what we're.
Yeah, it's realistic, but also, you know, goal, if that's the citywide goal, right, to, you know, reduce carbon emissions, then it's kind of, you know, other elements, it's kind of how are we going to do that?
Mhm. And I think that's why we, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, no.
I was just gonna say, I think that's why we really appreciate that a lot of the things that this group's wrestled with, because, you know, it just, what can we regulate? What can we incentivize? What's impactful, is not always easy to figure out. And sometimes we're doing that same thing kind of with buildings and energy right now too. If we had an incentive, because we're not allowed to regulate what's actually something that somebody would care about enough to make as an incentive? Is it affordable? Is it sustainable? Lots of things to maybe just test and see how they work. And I think Stormwater and SMAC have actually led the way in a lot of these regulations and just leaps and bounds. I know since Wayne's been here, a lot of things that this group's done. But yes, it's almost like, how do we keep up, especially in a city that grows so fast? It's a double-edged sword because we have more opportunities and resources. But then the pace is very fast too. So these are great questions for sure.
As Graham probably remembers that, like, if you have a pie chart, right, this round circle that has all the greenhouse gases in like Wake County, the city is responsible for like a 2% slice of that. So when they're saying they're gonna reduce it by 80% by 2050, that's 80% by 2%. So how do we incentivize the private projects out there to lead to as well, given, you know, certain
So-
regulations and rules and stuff.
That's a great.
And that's when we give as EAB, when we gave our building report and our solid waste report to council, we're always trying to get them to think about incentives. I mean, we don't know what those are because we're not necessarily experts in that sort of side of things, but it's certainly something, you know, we can only really control 2% of that slice.
Well, yeah, like our own operations are less than 2%. So like all the water we provide, all the roads we build, that's less than 2% of the emissions in Raleigh. And so to Ben's point, we don't have a lot of control. It's kind of a scary, crazy place to be, to have this community-wide goal. That's why a lot of cities don't have those yet too. We don't have a lot of control. And in North Carolina, there's a lot of things, you know, Mother May I State, we can only do so much to control. So we really are trying to think about all the creative ways we can go about that to tackle it. Yeah. And we want to lead by example, but again, you know, it doesn't have the impact unless we can figure out the ways to really impact the whole community.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Megan and her staff for all the collaboration and partnership. It's really been a lot of opportunities to work together, and I think we're taking advantage of a lot of those. When Reverend Taylor and I came to the EAB and gave the presentation, Dr. Bobet, you referenced that a couple of equity initiatives and things. I did want to, the commission heard this, I wanted to update the EAB though. We have implemented that rainwater rewards subsidy program and are providing 100% funding now in disproportionately impacted areas for that program, to build green infrastructure on private properties. So rolling that out, it's on the website. If anyone's listening and wants to look at Raleigh Rainwater Reward Subsidy Program, there's a map of the disproportionately impacted area, and income thresholds are under 80% AMI, and there's corresponding rental thresholds so that the opportunities for rental properties that have GSI installed as well. So thanks to Megan, and you all helped us kind of design and think through the implementation of that program. So appreciate all the collaboration on that and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
too.
That's tough to kind of figure out with all the different pieces. So we sure had a lot of talks about that. So thanks for the leadership with that. And we're excited to see how it goes. And again, that's one of those testers. We'll come back and see how it goes and then tweak if we need to later on. Yeah. Another good leadership group there for that. I think that kind of model, I've actually spread other departments to say, this is how we figured it out with stormwater. Maybe it'll work over here too.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much again. Right here.
All right. Yeah.
Well, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
See y'all. I think it's been maybe a year and a half or more, I think, since I presented on the flood early warning system for, I'm gonna call you smack. I'm just used to it. I've been around a long time, so I'm used to the commission. So I know some of you have seen this before, and Reverend Taylor, I don't want to bore you, but this is a lot similar to what you saw a few weeks ago, but we do have some surprises. We got some changes. So, it's not just me this time. Usually I take this show on the road myself a lot of times. And since I was with y'all last, I literally have been on the road with this a lot. As Wayne said, we presented at the State Floodplain National Conference here in Raleigh recently. Back last year, we were at the National Public Works Association presenting there on the flood early warning system, USGS, the Army Corps of Engineers, Wake County and some of their commissions, and you name it. It seems like every other week I'm doing a presentation on the flood early warning system, which is good, and getting it out there and telling everybody what we're doing and what we're working on here in Raleigh. And a lot of communities and municipalities are really impressed about what we're doing. So it's great. Hopefully we can lead the way, and I've been told we are leading the way in the nation in several areas on this. So, but to help y'all out, it's just not going to be me today presenting, so I'll do a good portion of it. But we also got Ethan to stand up. Ethan Clark, he is our stormwater, well, I'm gonna still say intern because I don't think it makes sense. He's part-time. He actually started helping us about 3 years ago as a rising senior from Broughton. And he volunteered and for a couple of years, and now he actually gets paid. So he's a position, part-time paid position for him. And he is now going to NC State for meteorology and environmental science, right? And you're a rising junior? Hey, I'm doing good. All right, so Ethan will be talking to us a little bit about what he does. We got Scott Bryant, you know Scott. He's gonna be talking to us a little bit about our active flood control program that we have in the city, which is new to probably all of you. And some other additional things, our partnerships and things like that he'll be talking about. And if I get Barrett to stand, Barrett is a special guest today. As y'all know, today is what? June the 1st, and it is the first day of hurricane season. Wayne said he was gonna buy you all pizza if you answer. So, but Barrett, he is with the National Weather Service. So we got a special guest and you are the senior hydrologist with the National Weather Service here in Raleigh. So it's great to have him, and he'll be doing a good portion of the presentation for us to tell us about what the National Weather Service does and a little bit about the upcoming hurricane season, right? So that'll be some good information. So we're looking forward to this. Well, I am. I hope you are. So, and the other scary thing is I think we're last, which is good. I'm last. But the problem is, I told Wayne, and Wayne knows this, I can talk about this and probably Barrett and the rest of us to talk about this a long time. So we're gonna try to keep you out of here early since we're starting. So, the flood early warning system for the city. So we'll first talk about some goals and benefits of the, and if you hear me say fuse, that's what I'm talking about, the flood early warning system. Ethan's gonna talk a little bit about the internal weather forecasting and communication we do, here in the city. I'll come back and talk about the overview of the flood early warning system program. Scott will talk about our active flood control, and Barry to come and talk about the National Weather Service. So the goals and benefits of FUSE. So number one, improve public safety and awareness, right? So this is a flood early warning system. So obviously the whole purpose of building this system is so we can know early when it's going to flood and we can warn folks, right? And the more proactive we can be, the better information we can be, the better predictions we can get. Even in isolated spots, we can warn folks better. So we do this through flood monitoring. We have a flood warning software, system software, and I'll show you some aspects of it. Gauges, rain gauges, stream gauges we have across Raleigh. Some sensors, flood warning sign sensors and things like that. And we have cameras that we use for flood monitoring. Flood predictions, we'll talk about that through the software. And we use the software for advanced warning and also alerts and notifications. Okay. Also, another benefit and global benefit that we have is improved system planning and flood resilience through historical flood data. So our software has the ability to store information. So we can go back historically and look at that information and pull it up. Flood and rainfall events reports. We'll get into that a little bit where the system actually can spit out. I'll tell you something real funny when quick because I got time. So after we had built the report into the system, we had a large rain event. The next morning, I sent out a report on what had happened in the rain event and an email, and in there, I included the report. The report was like 75 pages long. Scott, Scott's my boss. So Scott, he thought I had stayed up all night and worked on the 75 pages. Yeah, no, not really. The system creates it in about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. And so, which is a great thing, right? It gives us the data we need really quick. Something new, and we'll talk about that a little bit, is the what if scenarios system that's built into it as well for looking forward at what might happen during storm events. We can make up something to see what happened, or just take the forecast and put in it, see what could potentially happen in the creeks and areas around Raleigh, and active flood control. All right, so we're gonna let Ethan come up here and talk a little bit about what he does for us here.
Hi, everyone. Good to meet you. I'm Ethan Clark. Been with the city for about 3 years. And so my main forecast job is just internal forecasting with the city of Raleigh. So I help build the forecast. And if you're a city staff member, you probably get my email at least once a week. And it comes out the forecast update. And I'll just give a general breakdown of what's to expect for the week ahead and just any weather stuff to get and impact city operations. And then just any active weather that's incoming, severe weather, you name it, we have it. And I break down rainfall amounts, any of that expectation that we have, and then it's sent out to all of our stormwater staff, and the list has grown very large. So now it's sent out to police officers and fire and emergency communications, and just to get everyone updated so we know what's expected. So that's my main job. And obviously I help Kelly do any type of small stuff to it around flood warning system, help him with meetings and stuff, and then building that program, which has been really cool to see. So these are some examples of my emails that go out each week. I just send them out at least once a week, and then if there's active weather, I'll send it out more than once a week, and then we'll do 24-hour coverage tracking. And then during hurricanes and special events of winter weather, we have internal meetings with our team, and then we discuss what the plans are for hurricane forecasting. That's like our main thing. So this is an example from Hurricane Ian. This is like my breakdown of our impacts to the city, city services, what we could expect, and just overall impacts of forecasting. So they're distributed across many city departments. That's my main role, forecasting, and had a passion my whole life. So it's been a cool experience to be able to work with the city I grew up in, doing some forecasting for the city. I think that's it. Mine was pretty short and sweet. That's how much time we had. So I'm pretty sure if you have any questions, you can talk to me or reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Ethan is very modest. So, I don't know if you know this, you may or may not know this. I can brag on Ethan, right? Since he works with us. So, brag on him anyway. But Ethan does have a weather, is it on, it's Facebook, right? It's on Facebook and it's, the NC Weather Authority page that he has, and he's had it, when did you start it? You were really young.
Seventh grade.
Seventh grade. Does anybody follow him? Did anyone else follow him, NC Weather Authority? Not yet. I would say you will, but you won't be the only ones. How many followers you got now?
307.
307,000 followers. So we're glad to have Ethan on our team. If we want to get the word out, all we have to do is have Ariel put something on our city Twitter page or something like that, and then have Ethan hit it, and then boom, we got 300,000 things. See how we work? We know how we work this. So we appreciate Ethan and all he does, and he does a lot more than what he shows. He's been helping me with our Fuse Master Service Project, Master Plan Project, and also we couldn't get done what we do get done without him. He helps us with the maintenance on the flood warning signs. You'll see camera installs and all that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate Ethan's help, and he does a lot more than just help us and go to school. So it's amazing. I don't understand how he can get it all done. All right. To jump into the flood early warning system, what we're going to start with, and what we would always have to start with, is gauges. So we got to get that right through somewhere. So for the flood early warning system, our main sources of data will be stream gauges and rain gauges. Currently, we got 15 stream gauges across Raleigh, inside the Raleigh city limits, and also 21 rain gauges. Now, this has jumped up a lot over the past few years. I guess the biggest increase was 2018 when we installed 5 stream gauges, rain gauges along Walnut Creek. At one time, it was just heavily on Crabtree Creek, not as much on Walnut. I think it was only one on Walnut Creek at Sunnybrook Road. And so we saw the need on Walnut Creek back in 2018 and added all those, and we've been adding gauges ever since. And hope to continue to, right, over time. So another thing that we have done in the last couple of years is add the radio frequency system, which is called the Alert 2 system, is what it's called. And it's a radio frequency system, and it gives us 5-minute data updates. Now that's huge for us, because in the past, we would only get updates every hour and maybe every 15 minutes. Now the creeks around Raleigh or any metropolitan area, they're flashing, right? You're gonna have a lot of times quick rises, and they'll come back down pretty quick. And if you're getting hour updates, the event may even be over with before you even know it. So the 5-minute data was huge, and we appreciate our partners with USGS, who helps us out with all our stream and rain gauges. There's actually, and we also have a partner downtown. I won't say, but there's a large building downtown, and we have a tower, a radio antenna on the top of the tower down there. And the signal sent from all the different gauges all across Raleigh, and it gets relayed back over to the USGS office across on the west side of town. It's pulled into their system, and then we pull it into ours as well. We get this data, it goes into our flood early warning system, and we'll talk about what happens with that in just a little bit. Other partners here with these gauges, obviously USGS, we've had a long-term partnership with them, and we are enjoying, they do great work. What happens with them, USGS installs the gauges and maintains them, but we pay for the service, right? We pay for the maintenance annually. We also have a partner in Raleigh Water. Raleigh Water helps us pay for some of the gauges as well. Used to, several years ago, they actually paid more than we did because they were responsible for more gauges. And now we have passed them and pay for more gauges ourselves now. But we partner on a lot of gauges in Raleigh, but they also have gauges outside of Raleigh because they have service area outside of Raleigh. But that helps us as well, gets information and lets us know what's coming before it even gets into Raleigh. Raleigh Fire Department, they have started to become a big partner that we have. We were trying to think, okay, where can we put rain gauges? We'll get into the gauge adjusted radar rainfall in just a minute. But we was like, where can we put rain gauges to help us with that system, to let us know how much it's raining and all around the city? Well, if obviously the city has a lot of facilities, and we say, well, what's best around the city we can use? We can use park facilities, we can use other kind of facilities, but what we found out that obviously fire departments are spatially located across Raleigh, and we've talked to them, and they have agreed to let us install rain gauges throughout the city. So that's great. Wake County is new partners that are coming on. Wake County is going to be helping us install. They're going to be installing gauges in the county. And also the NC Department of Public Safety is installing some lake level gauges across the city. And we're going to be having access to all this data. It's going to be coming into the flood early warning system as well. Now getting into the software itself, which our consultant View and Associates is helping us build, are things such as this. We've got radar built into the system. I'm sure probably every one of you probably have some kind of smartphone that has a radar app on it or something you pull up. That's similar to this that's built into the system. As you can see, you got your different intensities. We can actually hover over the 1 by 1 kilometer grid pixels, and it'll tell you what the rainfall intensity is, right? So is it raining, a half an inch an hour? Or is it raining 5 inches an hour? You know what? Knowing that makes a big difference. You know what's coming, right? Also, we have forecast built into the system. Currently, we use the HER, or the high rapid resolution refresh model, or the NDFD, which the National Weather Service helps out with. And we pull these into the system. That's a 3-day forecast. And we can pull those into the system, run those, and see what potentially rainfall we're going to have over the next 18 hours or 3 days. And we can also pull up graphs to see how that rainfall will be falling over that time period as well, potentially. Although it's a forecast, right? So that's potentially. All right, the gauge adjusted radar rainfall. And I pulled up these two photos, so to speak, so I can show you how important this is. This is when we started this system, it was like, yeah, it's the gauge adjusted radar rainfall. But when we got to really using this and understanding what this is providing to us, this became a big player in the flood early warning system, and getting information out to our engineers and providing information for staff and council and things like that. So pretend you can't see this. I should have made it where it just popped up later, right? So as you can see, here's the map of Raleigh. And you can see all these dots here. They're different rain gauge or stream gauge locations, right? So before the gauge adjusted radar rainfall, if a rainfall event happened, the only thing we would know is where it rained at those locations, right? We wouldn't have a clue what happened out here or any other of those, or more than likely what happened at your house, because I assume those rain gauges are not at your house, right? So we wouldn't know. For an instance, one time, I think it was in 2018, maybe, when Newton Road washed out, there was an event where the rain just sat there and rained for about 2 hours. Rained about 3+ inches, I believe, or something like that. It really didn't, it won't over Raleigh. It was just kind of centralized in that location, stayed right there. We didn't have a gauge there, so we didn't know what was going on. Well, guess what? Thanks to the gauge adjusted radar rainfall, we would know today. We would have known when it started raining, how long it rained, what the intensity was, and everything about it. What happens with this system? This system takes radar, and as you'll see, like on your phone, you see your radar coming across the area, right? And radar can estimate how much rainfall has fallen, right, over a given time. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but it is not very good at estimating how much it rained. It's okay, but it's not really accurate. So what happens is the gauges, and the system takes the gauge information and the radar information and compares it, right? And says, okay, well, the radar says it rained 1.5 inches. Well, the gauge says it only rains 1 inch. So it takes, it doesn't just use that gauge, it uses all the gauges in the whole system and reevaluates it and corrects it. right? So it's gauge adjusted. So the radar is gauge adjusted. And we end up with this, and you can actually go down to 1 by 1 kilometer grids, click on that 1 by 1 kilometer grid and see how much it rained at that specific location. Not only that, you can see the intensity of how much it rained at that location every 5 minutes. So this has been extremely helpful for us here with the city. And this also builds in. So you got your rain gauges, right? We got our stream gauges. We got now our gauge adjusted radar rainfall, okay, that we know how much it's spatially raining all over the city. Now we can do some predictions. So we have built into the system here a system that predicts heights and lead times for potential flooding. So what you'll see here, let's just use Crabtree Creek at US 1. If you look at, you can see obviously there's a red line and a blue line. Now, if we were in real time, this was taken back in history. So if we were in real time, you would see the red line, which is the observed or the observation that you're seeing at the current time, right? So this was passed and it would stop. The red line would stop. The blue line is the prediction that the system's doing. So the blue line, it would just keep going, right? To say a prediction of how high that location stream gauge is going to get at that location during that rain event, right? So this is going to give us at least an hour, 2 hours prediction ahead of time, letting us know if that location is going to flood, which is extremely important, right? So now we can let the emergency responders know if they need to go close a road. If we have a facility that's prone to flooding, we say, hey, you might need to close that facility, get those folks out of there, those kind of things. So this is something obviously this is a pilot thing, and we're all the time working on it and developing it. There's a lot of other things. There's about 20 items that go into this prediction model, even including subsurface runoff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into soil moisture content. It's pulling all this data in to make these predictions. All right. So storm frequency alerts and storm frequency alerts and notifications. So I'm sure you're all aware of hopefully from storm frequencies, or I call it depth duration frequencies. And some people might say, oh, it's a 2-year storm or a 10-year storm or 50-year storm or 100-year storm event, right? So the system can actually tell us, due to the gauge adjusted radar rainfall information and everything that's built into the background of the system, it can pull out and tell us what kind of rain events has happened, right? On the map. So we can know if is it a 5-year event that happened, a 10-year event happened, a 50-year event. We will be able to know this automatically because that makes a big difference. Say, I won't pick on Lauren because I used to be a sediment erosion control inspector. So if I had some kind of S&E, sediment erosion control device that was supposed to hold up to a 10-year event, right? Well, if I had a 5-year event and it blew out, that's a problem. But what if it was a 50-year event and it blew out? Well, it won't design to hold up a 10-year event, right? So that kind of information is important and how you can kind of use this stuff. And that's just a small example. Alerts and notifications. So this is currently in-house. So I say in-house, but we actually have external partners that have access to this as well. Currently, that we can set up anything if we want to be alerted on depth duration frequency, like a storm event, potential storm event, GAR information forecast, gauge heights, rainfall, how much is rain at a gauge, anything such as this, we can build something in and get an alert sent to us. For example, I know that at Crabtree Valley Mall on Creedmoor Road, if it rains about an inch, 1.3 or so inches in 30 minutes, that road's going to flood. Not from the creek, but just the system can't handle that event, right? So I know there's going to be flooding, so I could actually set up an event on here for that grid to alert me if it's forecasted to happen or if it's actually happening, right? So that I can know and check that area out and see if it is indeed flooding and let the emergency responders know. And they have access to it as well. They can see it as well.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Can you go back?
Yeah.
Is that the 200 year flood events by 64?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
So this was,
number one?
yeah, so this was back October, I don't know if you remember this event or not, I know Wayne and Scott and others do. This was October the 9th of 2021. And we had a event that night around, it started raining around 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and rained till about 10. And it's really concentrated on this side of town. But does anybody know what happens if it rains on the west side of town? It all flows through Raleigh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all flows through Raleigh. Yeah, this event actually, down at Dana Drive, this was the last time they had all the flooding down there and the flooded the residents out, the, renters out there. That's when that happened. That was the storm event. They actually had 500 year events in a couple of those places too. Yeah. So what it's looking at, don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but what it's looking at, the system's not looking at what a lot of people think about a 100-year event. So most people think a 24-hour 100-year event. This system is looking at whether it's a 5-year, 100-year, 5-minute, 100-year event, a 10-minute, 100-year event, all the way up to 72 hours. If it meets the criteria of any of those, it technically is that event, and it posts it on the system as it hit it out. Right.
Do you track the frequency?
How many 500-year
Yeah.
events we had in past?
I mean, it's not the 500 years, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and that's something that we can build into the system. We don't have it where we can go out and pull that data, like, tell me every time it hits a 500 event on this 1x1 kilometer grid, right? We can do that, you know, if that's something, the commission would like for us to look in and do it, and it's probably a good thing to do. To be able to pull that historical data, what frequency we've had in those locations, even the string gauges and stuff, which we can do string gauges for the USGS data. But yeah, we can look into doing that, yeah.
I could just comment on that real quickly. That's why it gets confusing to the public is when they
Yeah.
hear, we had 300-year events last year, right? Well, how could that be? You know, that's climate change, right? Well, I think this illustrates when you're looking at statistics, it's based on one point in one rain gauge. So if we could have several 100-year events in different places in Raleigh, you know, or around the area, and this helps illustrate that that's occurring. It may or may not be at the same exact point, but that's a hard conversation to convey to the public. It's very confusing. And then the other point Kelly made, we might have a 100-year 5-minute event that's, you know, an inch that happens or 2 inches that happens in 5. That's a 100-year storm technically based on statistics. So that's why we do try to use language more like probabilities now, like a 1% chance of occurring. Because you know, there's all these different durations, there's all these different geographic, you know, so that's why it's confusing and hard to explain to people.
Yeah, I like to equate it to winning the lottery. If someone says that I have a 1% chance of winning the lottery on any given day, I think that's a pretty good chance. You know, not 100, 1 in 100 years.
Right.
It says frames it differently.
Exactly.
That's right. And it was very eye-opening to be able to see this data and have this, to pull it up after storm events. And I'll tell you, pretty much almost after every summertime storm event front that comes through, you're gonna have some place that had probably a 100-year event. Yeah, it's rare not to see it. And I've seen a lot more lately, just in me viewing it, where they have been 5 and 10 and 15-minute 100-year events. I mean, we have had some extremely intensive rainfall in the past, especially in April. It was when we had a rain. All right, inundation mapping. This is something new that the system has. This is produced in real time and is based off the gauge adjusted radar rainfall information we have, and this is a high resolution with individual hydrographs. So what the system does is takes the rainfall amount and the gauge information and develops a GIS map, so to speak, internally, It shows you where the flooding is taking place or predicted to take place, right? And you can actually click on the graph and the map, and it actually brings up the graph. And it tells you what we show you just like the stream gauge, right? And show you when the flooding would potentially happen and how deep it would be, all right? But that's something new that we're working on and tweaking. What if technology, this is new too. It's something I spoke a little bit about a while ago. This application here, we have the ability to take a forecast that we have and put it into the system, run it, and see what kind of stream elevations we're going to have at our stream locations, correct? All right. Not only that, let's say the National Weather Service says, with NOAA and everything, they're putting out the forecast. We've got a hurricane potentially coming to us, just like back in 2018 when the hurricane was coming. And they predicted we were going to get 18 inches. 18 inches of rain. Could you imagine us having 18 inches of rain? Good gracious, can't imagine what would happen. But we can actually take 18 inches and put it into the system, tell it how long we think it might rain over, the time frame, run it through the system and see what might potentially happen across the city wall. Right. So this application is brand new. It's something we're obviously, when something's new, you want to work with it and tweak it and everything. But it's new and we're excited about this. And some of our partners are excited about this as well, to be able to, especially Wake County, to be able to look at this in line with their facilities. A few things real quick that we're working on as well. Flood warning signs. I don't know if any, I hope y'all have seen these across the city. So we have 9 locations that we have sensors and flashing signs. So what happens now is these sensors are float sensors. There's a box down the side near the road, near the curb. And what happens when the water comes up, the sensor floats up and activates the signs and tells them to start flashing, right? They start flashing. When the water goes down, recedes, it stops and they stop flashing. So it's automated. It works on its own. It sends out push notifications to us, text, email. We could call us on the phone if we wanted. We wanted to call us on the phone. And we're partnering with transportation on this. They're actually doing the installs for us. We purchase them. They do the installs and then we maintain them. One interesting thing we do, we have one sensor at a park facility over there at Southgate Park. That park facility floods sometimes because of the creek that's real near it. They've had to rescue folks out of that facility. So we've actually took a sensor and put there at the creek, and it sends notification to the park staff, let them know when the creek's getting up so they can get the patrons out of there, citizens out. All right, so a few other new things we got is this started back in 2018 in the hurricane there as well. We got a partnership with transportation on cameras. So obviously they have transportation cameras. You might see them on the street. If you look up, it's a lot of intersections. You might see a camera there. That's the ones we're talking about. Currently, they got 159 or so of those, maybe 160 now. We talked to them and we got an agreement with them that if we purchase a camera, they'll take it and they'll put it up for us and they'll maintain it. And we get to watch not only our cameras, so to speak, Stormwater's cameras, during storm events. They give us access to all the cameras. So during the storm events, we can sit there and look at all these cameras and view potential flooding that's going on in the streets or streams or things like that. Also, something brand new is the transportation cameras are not everywhere, right? They're only at where the stoplights are and things such as that. So we got to find something to fill in the gap. So we actually started using these cellular and solar powered cameras. We currently have 19 of those across the city, and I've got about 40 more in my office that's going to be put up. Hopefully have them installed by the end of the year. Ethan, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a little while for us to get that. You know what we'll be doing this summer, right? So we're installing those, and it's been great. Hey, the great thing about them is you can pull them up on your cell phone and look at them anytime you need to, whether you're at home or what, if something's going on. We're partnering with the Parks Department on this. What we're doing is anywhere that we know there's been some issues on greenways in the city in the past. So we are giving them access to every one that we put that's near a greenway, and we can have a view to see the greenway and things such as that. All right, now I'm talking to you, so I'm gonna turn this over to, Scott, and he's gonna talk to about some exciting stuff we're doing with our active flood controls.
Thank you, Kelly. Great job. We are excited about this program and this is about public safety, keeping our community safe. Great job. So proud of our team. Ethan does other things as well. We're still internally with the certain radio station.
Not actually, but right now, 3 minutes.
Okay. So lots of activity. We're very excited to have Ethan on board with us and Alex as well. Welcome also. Well, thank you again, Commissioner. I'll be very brief, so we can turn this over to Barry Richardson. No National Weather Service on the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. But what do we mean by active flood control? What do we mean by that? Okay. Around 2018, Stormwater took effective hydraulic ownership over Lake Johnson, which is the largest lake in the corporate limits of Raleigh, in the Walnut Creek, headwaters of the Walnut Creek watershed. We have been able to apply remote technology. So at the click of a button, Kelly is one of the operators. I may have access as a backup, I'm not sure, but essentially remotely, we can, ahead of storm events, lower the pool level in Lake Johnson to what we have termed actively controlled floods. So we're able to detain waters. Lake Johnson drains about almost 8 square miles of land area in that area that had that storm event we just looked at in October. So we're effectively able to take out 8 square miles, 7 to 8 square miles of watershed away from Walnut Creek. And that has shown significant benefits in reducing downstream flooding. We obviously partnered with the Parks Department for the Lake Johnson parks out there. It's been very successful. And we don't do this with just a typical modest rainfall. This is like a 3-inch, 4-inch rainfall when we have time. So when we have forecasted time to lower the lake, because it does take some time, about a foot per day is what we can safely drain it down. And we also are cognizant that water has to safely flow through Walnut Creek and essentially leave the city limits, if you will, so waters can return to normal levels. So we don't want to exacerbate flooding ahead of rainfall. So we're very cognizant. So we typically do about 1 foot per day, and then we'll stop the lowering at least a day or so in advance of the storm event. Here's one success story. We've got several. Hurricane Ian. We lowered Lake Johnson. We were aware from National Weather Service forecast and Ethan's forecast and others that we were going to have maybe 3, 4, possibly 5 inches of rain with Hurricane Ian. We had at least a week's notice on that. So what we decided to do is begin lowering Lake Johnson. This is the spillway crest of Lake Johnson, right here, the red line. The blue is the water level in Lake Johnson. Thanks to our USGS partners, we have a monitoring station out there. So we lowered the lake for several days, actually lowered almost 4 feet. Hurricane Ian then affecting Raleigh comes in and see what happened here. We drew it right to below the crest. It did not spill from the crest. It had its base flow from that it carries normally, but we could not have done that one any better. Now, will we get that close every time? That. In fact, we got about 3.5 inches of rainfall from that event. We lowered it just under 4 feet. We've learned about 1 inch of rainfall in that watershed is about 1 foot in Lake Johnson. So it actually worked out pretty good. So we're going to keep tracking that. But here's what the highlights. So that's neat. We like to think about hydrographs and what we did there, but then the benefits of that protection for downstream Walnut Creek. Rose Lane is one of our most flood prone areas really in Raleigh, certainly Walnut Creek. Here's the benefits of what we did. 2 hydrographs here. This is what we actually did in reality, is the drawdown scenario. Since we drew down Lake Johnson, detained those waters upstream, reduced downstream flooding here. This is the road level, the road flooding level for Rose Lane. And this is what happened in reality. This is what would have happened. Here's a better picture of what would have happened. So had we not lowered Lake Johnson for detention, we could have seen something like this. This is not that exact event, but we think this is approximately what those flood levels we're looking at. Highly flood prone. This is a one-way in, one-way out community. We're trying to address that through a capital project that Money and team are working on, hoping to bring a solution for that community in the near future. This is about what happened in reality. So it did get up within 1.5 feet or so.
It's about 8 inches.
about 8 inches. So roughly, you see, this may not be, this may be a foot or so, but something like this, still the roadway is safely passable through that active flood control. So we're very thankful to be able to develop an active flood control system for Walnut Creek. Now, what are we doing in terms of future phases of the program? Kelly's got more presentations to add, so we got some more work to do, lots more work to do. We do want to increase our coverage of the gauge Chester radar rainfall. We're doing a lot of work to add additional gauge flood protection locations, extended weather forecasts, as Kelly already mentioned, and bringing in our partners in National Weather Service. Even more, we're already reporting greenway flood levels to our Parks Department, because those are often the flood first assets, if you want to flood. They're adjacent to the streams. And so we're really, working to do more with the greenways, make more of our in-storm event reporting publicly accessible as soon as possible. Currently, it's an internal process. We coordinate, get that information to public safety responders very quickly. Probably not too far away from having that on the web. More alerts, more of a public-facing program. And very excited about potential regional collaboration with Wake County, other area municipalities. The best way to think about these storm events is on a regional basis as they affect the entire area. With that, I'm going to highlight a couple of things that I've heard today. Collaboration, partnerships, working together towards common goals. I've heard that in all of our presentations today. So thank you, Commission. Thank you, Megan, and Sustainability, Farm Advisory Board, National Weather Service. We could not do what we do without you all. We're very excited that we partnered with our IT department, Raleigh Water, Raleigh Emergency Communications, our city emergency management, Raleigh Fire, Parks and Recreation, Wake County, Corps of Engineers, USGS, and National Weather Service as well. So Barrett is here. I'd like to introduce Barrett Smith. He's going to talk about the good work of the National Weather Service, some insights into 2023 hurricane season for Atlantic, which I think starts today, June 1st officially. And again, thank you all, Commissioner, for your support for what we do. And we're excited about this program. The team is very passionate about it. We enjoy what we do as well. And we know it's beneficial for the community. Barrett?
All right. I'm realizing now that Kelly made me go last, and if we go over, you remember it was me. But no, I will say that, Kelly mentioned in his hearing that Raleigh's leading the way with some of this predictive and monitoring stuff they're doing. And it really is the case. I'm learning more and more. And that partnership that Scott's talking about is helping out. We're now producing some guidance for Rose Lane. You just mentioned Rose Lane, that I hope is helping to make some of those decisions for when to lower the lake levels. So that's awesome. I heard Noah mentioned in the heat stuff, we were part of the heat mapping. So this is really great. What a neat opportunity to be here with you guys. I'm used to talking to weather enthusiasts, so it's a nice diverse crowd here. Barrett Smith, I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist for the National Weather Service here in Raleigh. We're on Centennial campus. Briefly, I went to NC State. I'm from Asheboro, went to NC State, been in the area for a long time. I was a forecaster for about 10 years doing shift work. Took my family up to DC in 2017, and after 2 years, my wife said, absolutely not. We're going back to Raleigh. So I came back and I took the hydrologist position, probably the best career move I've ever made. I'm having a blast. I want to give you just real high level of what the Weather Service does. I could talk forever about all the things that we do that you don't know that we do. But basically, we're a federal agency tasked with providing weather, water, climate, data forecast warnings for the protection of life and property and the enhancement of the national economy. You're familiar with our warnings, you hear those, you see those. And then the enhancement of the national economy is kind of what's on your weather apps that keeps things going, helps people save money in the energy industry or transportation and so on. But the impact-based decision support services, that's a new thing that Weather Service is doing. Or has evolved into doing, and it's part of this building a ready, responsive, and resilient community. It's connecting with the people making decisions. We found out several years ago that forecasts are only as good as the decisions that are made from them. Right? This happens all the time. I invite my mom up to go to the pool during the summer, and she'll say, "Well, it says there's a 40% chance of thunderstorms." Well, okay, well, when is that? I'm like, it's probably for 30 minutes. Let's don't ruin the entire day and not get together just because. So, you know, a forecast is only as good as the decisions, and we can help people with making those decisions by communicating with them. So that's where we are going. We've been going, and it's only increasing the number of folks that we're working with. National Weather Service, 122 forecast offices, like where I work at, all across the country. Most of our headquarters are up in the DC, College Park area, but we have, you know, 13 river forecast centers all across the country, storm prediction center out in Norman, Oklahoma, aviation weather. We even have a space weather prediction center out in Boulder, Colorado. We service Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico. We're everywhere and doing all these different things 24/7, 365. Specifically, my office, again, located on Centennial campus, we service 31 counties in central North Carolina. So Greensboro up towards Roanoke Rapids, down to the Fayetteville, Clinton area, and not all the way over to Charlotte, but just about. But we're servicing all of those. And going back to what I'm learning from Raleigh is that the great things that Raleigh is doing when it comes to flooding and management of that and prediction, not all communities have the budget that Raleigh has. So I'm able to actually take what I'm learning from them and I was talking to Chapel Hill just the other day. I'm going to be out in Tarboro next week. There are communities that don't have budgets who need still some guidance and some help. That's where, as from the federal agency, we can maybe provide some little extra help. So again, we're working with everyone all across the central North Carolina. Again, you know, I could go on and on forever about all we do. You're familiar with our severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, winter storm warnings. I'm not even getting into the flood warnings and things because, again, I could be here till 5:30. But we do other things. We work with the Forest Service, providing forecasts when they're doing prescribed burns. Aviation, we provide forecasts for those. We do partner briefings. If a government agency, a municipality, any government to government, you come to us and say, hey, we need a briefing, we need a forecast for something that's going on, a big event, we provide those. And then finally, you know, we're up in the middle of the night, you know, checking out for fog, make sure everyone knows when they get up in the morning, they're headed out, whether or not there'll be fog. So again, we have about 15 meteorologists. They staff the office. At least 2 people are in the office 24/7 doing all these different things. It's truly amazing to me when I step away from it to think about it and all that we do. So I'll get into a little bit of the hurricane season. These are the names for this year. These are on a 6-year rotation. There's always a lot of interest in the names. Probably saw these or recognize some of these from several years ago. They're retired. If they are a big enough event, Andrew, Florence, those will be Harvey, those are retired. But these are the names. There's actually already one post-tropical cyclone, not post-tropical cyclone, subtropical cyclone in the Atlantic in January. The Hurricane Center went back and looked and found that it was actually a storm. It will not be Arlene. It was dubbed AL Atlantic 01 2023. So the first storm will be Arlene. So the forecast is for a normal hurricane season. That's 12 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 hurricanes, potentially 1 to 4 major hurricanes. You see the probabilities here, though, 40% normal, 30 below, 30 above. They're not that far apart. And I'll get into why that is, to balancing that between the factors that can influence it. But we think compared to past years, when we were in a La Nina pattern, and I'll get to El Nino in a second, we should be trending a little bit more towards normal. That's a good thing on the whole. Only takes one storm. I always have to say that. So this is a forecast of the potential for El Nino conditions to develop this year. Big takeaway here is a lot of red. That's the probability of El Nino developing over, these are 3-month intervals that basically you're going out towards JJA, June, July, August. We really think El Nino is going to develop. We're kind of in a neutral pattern at the moment. What does El Nino mean for the hurricane season? El Nino, if you're not familiar, is warming of surface temperature or the ocean over the equatorial Pacific. This map up here showing, so you can see the reds there just to the west of South America. When you get that warming, you get more development of thunderstorms over the Pacific. That tends to have a larger scale impact to drive the the jet stream a little further south across the southern US, Gulf of Mexico, that increases wind shear across the Atlantic, right? You know that warm waters and less wind shear are conducive for development of hurricanes. When the jet stream tends to shift a bit further south, it gives us more. So that would be hindering the development of more storms. So that's kind of the driving factor in shifting us towards a more normal hurricane season. This is kind of the idea of what's out there in the upcoming season. We do have above average sea surface temperatures, so that would be conducive for development. But then you've got the El Nino and the wind shear that would help to offset that. There are other factors that play into that. Stronger West African monsoon can help. So again, it's this balancing act between what's conducive and what's not conducive, and that's where we're at, and that's what's leading towards the near normal prediction for this year. And I'll wrap this up by just showing, this is the current, and I saw this was mentioned, the tropical weather, I guess Ethan puts these together for Raleigh. This is the current tropical weather outlook. This morning, there was a 50% chance of development down in the Gulf of Mexico, over the next 5 to 7 days. More than likely, even if something does develop, the weather pattern is going to kind of force this out into the Atlantic. So no threat to the southeast, but I kind of did want to give you a little bit of a forecast here. Just to let you know, there is something out there. We otherwise, over the next week, are going to stay with this kind of cooler, near normal pattern with periods of some rain and kind of the annoying pattern that we've been in. We're not quite in the summer. And then finally, I'll end with a monthly and seasonal outlook for you here. Out in the 1 month scale in June, basically equal chances of above or below normal rainfall. No real clear signal as to one or the other. And then as we head out into the summer months, there are higher probabilities of above normal rainfall. This doesn't mean that the darker green doesn't mean more heavier rainfall. It just means higher probability of above normal rainfall. This is not related to the hurricane season specifically. It's actually related to get into the weeds and science and stuff, but it's actually related to the fact that you heard about out in the West this year, they had a really wet winter. That is going to affect the summer monsoon over the Southwest US and actually may reduce the amount of rainfall we get there. That pattern shift would actually shift to the east and influence the eastern US. So it's a lot of different kind of connections that go on in the atmosphere. It's really, really fascinating. But I just kind of want to give you guys an outlook since you're talking about water here. This is the outlook for rainfall over the next 2 to 3 months. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. Weather Service is here. We are happy to help at all levels, federal, state, local, and we're really, really passionate about what we do. And so thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions if you want. It's still not 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it's still not. Great. We did it right on time. Any questions for us? We can answer it. Oh, no. Okay.
You mentioned partner with Wake County and get the Crabtree Creek watershed. There's a lot of lakes. So those are all Wake County owned. So hopefully that's what you're talking about.
I will briefly point you. In fact, we've had those coordination with Wake County on Lake Crabtree, Page Lake, some of the others, those NRCS structures out there in Crabtree. Yes, and so we're working into that. It's going to take partners to do that. That would be, for the Crabtree Basin. We're thankful that we have Lake Johnson already for Walnut Creek, NC State. We have some NC State connections in here. We're working with the folks at NC State with regard to Lake Raleigh as well. So we're looking at significant facilities. Like it does take a larger facility like that to make benefits on flood control. So yeah, great one. Wake County.
So Scott, if I could supplement, and we have had conversations, Wake County's looking at changing the panel and gate structure at Lake Crabtree. And we've helped given them some guidance based on how we configured Lake Johnson. And they're anticipating at least having the possibility of being able to use these kind of controls. We haven't done the analysis to support benefits or how that would work yet, but we're definitely in conversations about keeping that an open possibility and discussion for the future.
The models are incredibly impressive, and I appreciate all the mentioning of collaboration too. I was wondering, are you also collaborating with the Department of Environmental Quality right now in their flood resiliency blueprint that they're working on with the news? They're in such an early stage. I don't think that they're anywhere near where this stuff is.
I was you were waiting.
We're aware of it, but there's not been collaboration at this time. He did have some discussions with the Army Corps of Engineers recently, did a flood study for the News River as well. We gave them a lot of our historical information. They reflected in their model, but, we've not had a lot of conversations with the state of the.
I think they would really benefit from this. They're at an early stage. There's a news advisory group that has been asking for resources like this, so, yeah. Connect.
So I know we're glad to partner with anybody. I mean, that's what it's all been about this year. It seems like with the flood early warning system is when we really kicked off all the things with Wayne County, with National Weather Service, the Corps that Wayne mentioned, and so many others, in the local and surrounding areas. So, we're glad to partner with anybody.
And I'll just mention that Kelly was at our office and he asked me, he said, if there were more gauges put in somewhere, where could you use them? And really on the east side of Raleigh as well, because that all heads to Clayton and Smithfield. And so for our perspective, for forecasting flooding, which is going to change the more urban that entire corridor becomes, we encourage as much data as we can on that side of things as well.
Data's key. I think we all realize.
Are you coordinating with the Falls Lake guys? That's right.
That's great. Yes, early just to add to that, so the coordination, especially if and as we get into more active flood control, Lake Crabtree, the others. At some point, now when we released from Lake Johnson, we do see a blip as far down in Smithfield is on the News River. So I mean, very tiny, but 1 inch or so. It's just it's a bump.
Maybe 3 inches.
It's maybe a relative few inches. So yeah, if we have multiple facilities releasing concurrently, and if the Corps is releasing for Falls Lake, so we've already had some very early conversations, but that would need to be modeled, definitely an SOP for what we do and what we don't do, and how we do that, and how much, and when we turn off the spigot, so to speak.
Yeah, that's something that it will probably be something we would like to have. Obviously, this active flood regional look and lowering of lakes and things and using them to their full potential. Right? That's what my video what they were designed to build for. But something like that is going to take time. It's going to take time to build the partnerships, time to put in the infrastructure. One of the first things that Wake County is doing is installing lake level gauges, right? And as they get those, we will be putting that data into our software, which they have access to, and which they're enjoying using right now. And then obviously, hopefully the next steps will be, revamping the facilities where they can change them into active flood control, right? And then you can't just go, oh, rain's coming, let's open all the gates, right? There's some studies and things will have to be done. We definitely have to cooperate with the Army Corps of Engineers on what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and that kind of stuff. It's not like that we're going to do this and we're going to let it fly. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be a slow process that we're going to have to go through.
I have to ask you, do you know, is anyone from the city of Raleigh that's on the Corps has a Tuesday call? Every Tuesday I brief them on the weather. Do you know?
I don't know. I'm sure.
Question to follow up on that.
Yeah, something follow up on. I bet you probably somebody in our emergency management probably.
And Raleigh Water.
Yeah.
Okay.
Water supply. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
That'd be great if Samantha could get you guys involved with the resilience and blueprint efforts as they're all getting together. I know there are a lot of people trying to coordinate on that, but Raleigh seems to be the greatest thing for the watershed, the larger watershed.
Yeah. This is,
I've seen it. I think one other thing that just came to mind, I hear so much from communities in flood prone areas like Vincent, Seven Springs, who blame the Army Corps for releasing the dams and, that causing flooding. And I obviously know that that's not the case. And it just introduces this, it's a complex topic, and the charts that you all showed were so helpful in educating about how it's done responsibly and how it is, truly reducing flooding downstream. And I think that's an important component of exploring these tools, is making sure that downstream communities are aware of how it works and how it's not contributing to flooding in their backyards.
Great. Thank you for that. We really do want to look downstream and upstream. So even when we lower Lake Johnson, that provides benefits for areas upstream that would be affected by high water levels. So we want to be cognizant, we only want to be beneficial, both downstream and upstream. Really trying to be very cognizant of that. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Under other business, Raleigh City Council traditionally takes a pause for the month of July. They don't meet, and they meet again in August. In the past, this commission, SMAC, has followed suit and not meeting in July. So I wanted to introduce conversation about our taking a pause for the July 6th meeting and picking up with an August 3rd meeting. If we were to meet in July, pass anything, council would not see us until the end of August. So whether we meet in July or August 3rd, from a business standpoint, it doesn't interrupt anything. So just want to hear some of the commissioner's thoughts on that, on taking a pause in July and not meeting.
Might take that.
Okay, all right. Then may I have a motion that we take a pause for the July meeting, and our next meeting will be Thursday, August 3rd. Okay, Carol? All right, Barrett seconds. All in favor? No opposition. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you. Samantha second. All in favor? No opposition. Meeting adjourned.